Good morning, everyone. It's so nice to be here. I've been saying how I've been so happy this entire time, even though I've been traveling for about 8 days now. The people, everyone here has been wonderful, the energy, and just happy to be here that I can share the success of the Kaplan Educational Foundation and our scholars. The Kaplan Leadership Program basically focuses on underrepresented students, namely African American, African, and Latino students in the New York City area. We were founded in 2006 with seed money from the Kaplan company. We're all familiar with Kaplan, and if you probably see the colors and the brand, we did start it from their contributions. And in the last 10 years, we have really worked closely still with the company to provide us with resources. Basically, we are a public charity, just to give you a little bit of background about that. And again, started in 2006. And our approach has always been to help students, a very small group of students, in a very big way. We never said we are going to accept, 100 students or 200 students or 1,000. We wanted to work with a very small group, especially because it was really an experiment 10 years ago in how can we get these community college students into highly selective institutions. We follow a very similar model to the Jack and Cook. The only thing is that we focus on working with students at the community college level. These are students. I like to say that this is what they look like before they get into the program, and then we make them look like this, but I think the opposite is true. It actually starts out like that, and then they do this. Just wanted to give you a little bit of background and example of what a Kaplan Leadership Scholar looks like. And this is Rosa, and I told her that I would be showing her picture today and her resume, so she's fully aware. And Rosa, when she was at the community college, if you can see her resume, basically it was, working at McDonald's. I remember she used to open up McDonald's at 5 o'clock in the morning. Her dad at that time was undocumented. She worked as a babysitter, was a biology major at Kingsborough Community College. And then from there, this is what it looks like once she started attending Mount Holyoke. You can see that she ended up doing research at Harvard. You can see she graduated. You can see all of the things that she has done. But to be honest with you, and the point of my presentation today is that it all started at the community college, that it was really the efforts of the community college and the resources that began there, coupled with ours, that allowed for her to be the success that she has become, and she's currently working on her medical school applications. Have a little video, kind of debated whether to show it or not, but I am going to share it with you because it does share the partnership that we have with 4 years and 2 years.
There's a danger in the conversation that's going on about community colleges nationwide, and that is that we take other people's children, we send them to community colleges, and then we feel that we've succeeded in taking care of them and don't give them more. One of the things I like about this partnership with the Kaplan Education Foundation and NYU CCTOP is that we say, no. If students have the capacity to do more, we must, as a society, give them access to doing more without regard to their income.
I remember holding my daughter for the first time and just was like, I can't be poor. That's all I was thinking. And I was like, I want to give her everything. And I knew immediately that there was something I had to do.
My family would have appreciated if I dedicated my life to being a wife and being a mother, and not going to school necessarily.
As I learned all the requirements out there in the workforce, then I started thinking about, wait a minute, an associate's degree might not be enough.
Kaplan is doing work that I don't think any other organizations are doing, in that they are building a pipeline for transfer students and facilitating that often very challenging process of getting into the four-year school from your community college.
The Kaplan Leadership Program works closely with community college champions. We call them champions because they really work very hard to identify those students who are high potential. And by high potential, we mean a student that is really taking full advantage of the community college experience.
I think what makes Kaplan Scholars unique In addition to the financial support, it's the fact that they have an unusual level of personal support.
They show me the tools. Hey, this is how you can get there. That helped me figure things out and tell myself, hold on, there's a lot more I can do.
Every single student that I have had, their counselor there takes their success and their accomplishment very personally. So it really becomes another family.
So KLP is a little bit different from my family because my family is crazy. Let's just say that. I love my family, not to rule that out. But I was raised by my grandmother, and I didn't know my mother and father until I was 17 or 18 years old.
KLP was that husband that I didn't have when my daughter was little. KLP made sure that the issues that I was having in my personal life didn't affect my school, my grades, and my relationship with my daughter.
Being in a supportive group of people that they care about you and your education is amazing. They go beyond the call of duty.
The advisory part of the program was the most beneficial for me. I could have gotten any other scholarship and gotten the money to pay for the school, but it wouldn't have been the same change in my life.
They end up being some of the stars of the community. They end up leading clubs and starting new initiatives and giving this place the vivacity that characterizes it.
Here I'm at this great institution that so many greats have graduated from and have done amazing things. And then here I am, a Kaplan scholar with so much support. I just feel like I have no reason to not spread my wings and fly.
The Kaplan students so far have been the students that other students in the class have looked up to. So I think there's a lot of confidence in who they are and what they're going to accomplish.
Part of my job here as a social worker is to help the people we serve to develop some skills and the tools so they can be successful in life and continue living a life free of abuse. And sometimes I think about what I do here. It's just like a reflection of what I got from the Kaplan Foundation.
My daughter knows that there was something done by me that she wants to achieve, and that it all has to do with education. She believes that she can do anything because I've always said that I can do anything.
One of our graduates right now, she's planning to be a social worker and a lawyer. And nobody's questioning it. Of course she's going to be.
I'm optimistic and I'm excited, but at the same time, I'm so nervous because at 30 years old, I feel like a big baby because I've been so spoiled. And there's this fear of, will I be able to do it? But I'm so close. And I just know that they've given me the tools that I need to just spread my wings. And I can't think that it wasn't a blessing. It surely was that they came into my life when I needed them most. And now that I'm right there, all I can do is just fly like an eagle.
You know, what I like about that video, of course, you know, it's a video for the Kaplan Educational Foundation, and we talk a lot about what we do, but it really is, we depend on the community colleges and the four-year relationship in order for us to deliver that. It's never been, the Kaplan Educational Foundation can carry all of this work, and I just will go into what we all can do to make sure that students have the profile to get into the highest selective institutions, and if they end up in another school at another bracket, that they can just thrive as well, not just survive. We all have seen the numbers. 80% of first-time beginning community college students from the bottom income quartile aspire to complete a bachelor's degree, but only 25% actually transfer to 4 years, and only 10% actually attain a bachelor's degree. If you just really think about that, that's really a tough number to look at. just to let you know that we are looking for high-performing community college students that have a 3.5 GPA that qualify for financial aid. I like to say I always plug in Jack and Cook Foundation, because if you're looking for a scholarship that does work with undocumented students, the Jack and Cook Foundation provides that, and it's $30,000 a year. So always keep that in mind. I know that the undocumented presentation yesterday was canceled, so make sure you keep that information. The desire to transfer is major, but we also work with students in defining what is that desire to transfer. Just in following with the profile, our students meet the profile of any community college. We look for high performing, but we take students that are any age, and these are the students that we have served, ages 18 to 34. 8 have children. There are 32 women and 30 men. We take students that have that are working full-time. I'm going to go into the following. We have students with undocumented parents. We have students that have been homeless. Actually, a few of our students have been at risk of homelessness or are homeless. We have students that have undiagnosed learning disabilities, as well as diagnosed learning disabilities and acute illnesses as well, that had never been diagnosed, and we started to see that under stress, things were happening, and so we had to work with the community college, for example, to find the right health resources. Other things that we found was that most of our students were working more than 35 hours. The highest number of hours that one of our scholars was working at the point of community college was 60 hours, so you can imagine that with full-time enrollment. Many of our students also have more than 3 hours of commute. This is in New York City, so 3 hours of commute, it's an everyday thing. That's my commute each day to the office, so thinking about that with a full-time job, that's a lot of stress. And cultural separation, that means that many, especially with our ESL students and recent immigrants, but also our urban youth, the fear of leaving the borough that they live in is very real, as well as in, just having a relationship with people beyond their group and beyond their family has been an issue. So you can imagine if I'm trying to sell going to Stanford, right? There's a student who has a 3.9, and I'm like, you can go anywhere in this country. They're like, I'm not going on the street. What are you talking about? So that has been a major concern, and we understood that. So we have accepted 62 scholars so far, graduated about 29. We're supporting 16 scholars at the four-year institutions. We're just transferring students right now. The important thing about this is that our students apply to about 10 to 15 schools for transfer, with 5 of them being in the highly selective. So keep that in mind and all of the resources that are needed. On average, they do apply to about 10 schools. So those that are kind of really hardworking end up applying to 15. So 87% again of our students are accepted actually transfer from an associate's degree, and 89% are accepted to transfer to senior colleges. 87% of those Kaplan scholars that transfer to a senior college actually earn a bachelor's degree, and 70% of all Kaplan scholars earn a bachelor's degree. The 77% is likely to be higher. We need to confirm about 4 of our students, and so we cannot, we don't feel good about giving a higher number unless it has been confirmed. And 100% of our alumni actually find work related to their degree, and that has been major because we work so hard in these students developing leadership skills within that major and that concentration, that we want to make sure that they pursue a career and that they're ready and that they have certainty in how they pursue that career. So being able to find work for them has been also great because they also come back and are an example to their community college. These are the senior colleges that our students have been accepted to. Yes, in yesterday's presentation, I was discussing, and I urge everyone in this room to understand and to kind of to give credit to many of these four-year highly selective institutions that I think sometimes we say, well, they aren't accepting a lot of students. We did hear the news from Princeton, but I like to say that in the last 10 years, we have seen how a school like Stanford, like Brown, school like Harvard, Amherst, Mount Holyoke, Smith have really made a commitment to transfer students. I say, did you know that Stanford has their own housing for transfer students, an entire building dedicated to transfer students and a transfer admissions person, in that they accept more, they've accepted 2 of our scholars, and if you think of our numbers being in the 60s and 2, that's a pretty good ratio. And so keeping that in mind, and I know the same is true for Jack and Cook, so that, we have to start thinking that giving a very realistic view that these schools can and do and accept and graduate students of low income from community colleges. Just to give you a little bit of history about me, I'm a GED recipient. I actually dropped out of high school, got into a terrible fight. I kind of never share a lot of that because that's what happened, and it's like, how much do you share? Got into a terrible fight and ended up dropping out, and ended up at Kingsburg Community College in Brooklyn. And at the time that I entered Kingsburg Community College, I didn't speak that much English. I was 20. I really was an ESL student, was in developmental courses, but I met a professor who really said to me, Nancy, I love the way that you're so passionate about things, even if I don't understand what you're saying. And I said, well, I have to work on being able to speak and being able to kind of get my point across. And it was at that moment that I really started to read more. I started to see myself as a scholar or somebody that can have an intellectual contribution to any discussion. And it was that moment, I can recall, it was an evening class. It was an English class. And I really fell in love with studying and learned English and really became my own fan, before I really doubted myself. And so I see our scholars in the same way. Actually, I hope that they do even more things that I have been able to do with, I was able to also transfer on a scholarship to a 4-year institution, not a selective institution, but a school that really supported me, and that was Long Island University. Again, these are the schools. These are other schools that our students have been accepted to where they have said, no, I will not attend. And I think that is something that, to be honest with you, I continue to have conversations with these schools because they would say, can you send more students to us? And, and that is major because they're looking for community college students. It's just how do we prepare them to make it in that school? These are our rates. Again, I went over them, but that's the comparison between all students and low-income students. And again, we discussed yesterday how highly selectives are very good about graduating our students, especially high-need students. Looking back at the profile, again, I would have been considered a risk factor, right? This is a risky admissions. Nancy Sánchez is risky. Do we accept her? And that is the reality of many of our students that you are seeing as a high risk. Considering the transfer costs, this is something that from the Jack and Cook, and it shows there that these schools are able to meet the need at a higher level, and that's why we have also focused. We don't want our students to graduate with too much debt, and if you can see that these schools are able to meet need at a different level, and actually attending a lesser selective school may be even more expensive and a greater barrier. This is a transfer form that I always share that I hope that 4-year and 2-year institutions will both consider the questions that are asked here. I know it's hard to see, but if you think about how to assess a transfer school in the language that is needed for you to assess a transfer school, we speak to our students, they would say, I want you to attend a small school. They're like, what is that? 1 building? 2 buildings? It's really the sense of, what does that mean to me as a transfer student needs to be discussed. And these are the kind of the different types of characteristics. Do they have they have merit aid for transfer students? Do they have need-based aid? And what is that? We know what that means. They don't know what that means. How many students do they accept each year? Is there transfer housing available? These are the things that are so important for us to discuss, and to discuss the meaning of it within the transfer student need. Again, many of these students have children, many of these students have responsibilities back home in looking at this. And so we basically work with the student to give a grade, a personal grade to that school, not a grade that we give, and then they evaluate the school. And it really feels really good for them to be able to reach out to the schools and find out this information for themselves. If you think of the admissions model for many community colleges, you may never meet an admissions person. If you think of a 4-year model, and especially the highly selectives, you have to build a relationship with an admissions person. So considering that, we want them to start the conversation early. And this is how they start that conversation. This is the form that makes them be like an educated consumer of education, and to have the guide to be able to ask these questions and not to feel like these are outlandish, which is what many of our students say. What, should I ask that question? Like, you know, how can I ask how many students do you accept? Like, you know, and we empower them to follow up with the schools and find this information. I have some profiles here of students. He graduated from Brown University, graduated from Stanford, was selected to be the speaker of the class. For the engineering department at graduation, for the engineering school, and then eventually was accepted into the master's program of engineering. All credits were accepted. All of these students, every single credit was accepted into the highly selectives. Can you believe that? Right? That's never discussed, really. It's really hard to see, but 60 credits were accepted from the engineering program to the Stanford program. The only thing was that he showed up with a laptop that nobody could recognize. Everybody said, what is that? This doesn't work here. And so they got him a laptop. I went over Rosa. Novia graduated Smith College. By the way, all of these students have graduated from these schools with a 3.3 or higher. The Brown graduated with 3.9. Syracuse University, which is one of our partners, Hamisu is a really good story, ended up at Harvard Kennedy School for his master's. And so just giving you an example of what is possible. For first-year challenges to academic persistence, these are the things that we have discussed, and this is what we address. Academic integration is really a big deal for us. Managing the workload, connecting with faculty, and accessing university resources has been a major issue for our students, or a perceived issue for our students, right? Which is very different. Social integration, finding the extracurricular activities and friends and study partners, affinity with other students. What I think is important about these things is that these things exist at the community college. This is not just at the 4-year. And if you do not address it at the community college, the assumption that this transfer shock starts at the 4-year, it's really something that we have to think about. That for many students, these things, even the high-performing students, and that you have to work with the students at the community college in contemplation of transfer, addressing this. Again, it's something that I have seen a lot in discussions from the 4-year, but at the 2-year, it's not discussed the same. Meeting the demands of a job and a cost of school. If they cannot manage this at the 2-year, they will not be able to manage it at the 4-year. Period. These are our model. We work on our students a lot on identity and owning who they are, not being apologetic about who they are. As a Puerto Rican woman, we carry our flag everywhere, to the beach, in our car, everywhere. And there is a great sense deal of pride. I'm proud of that too. If I could carry it here, I would have, but it would have been too much. Although my mom would have said just perfect. In thinking about a sense of pride, and especially if you go into a place where you are underrepresented, really allowing for that student to develop themselves and to own who they are and to walk with pride is really important. I don't want our students to feel like anyone is doing them a favor. Because if you're going with that perspective into these schools, you're going to have a great sense of, you could get lost very quickly. And you will have to make very tough decisions in that 4 year as you navigate it socially. And you have to be able to say, no, that's not what I stand for, and it's okay. And I'm proud of who I am, and actually I'm gonna tell you who I am. And I think it's really important that we work on that with our students. Also a sense of community. We never want our students to say, you know, this community college, you know, have the joke about the community college, like I'm just passing through. You have to own the community you belong to, and so that's really major. And so that's why we really work with them in becoming leaders in their community colleges. The family is a major issue. We really work with our students to mimic discussions with family about what they will be doing. We separate them into two. There are those students who promise their parents that they were going to be doctors, and they no longer want to be doctors, but now they can go to Smith, and now they're like, I don't want to be a doctor anymore. And so having these conversations is really important, but also having the conversation about leaving home. Enrollment, we've had a student who was accepted to about 6 different colleges with about 3 different full packages, and the father said, you cannot go. You just cannot go. And we had to meet with the parent to discuss that even though this was California, it was only 6 hours away, and that if he would have moved to upstate New York, it would have been the same. Actually, I did the calculation for the parent, and then eventually, I don't like to see, I know that it was much than that. It was more than about timing, and we had to have those conversations with parents and families. Also, in terms of self-reliance, the whole issue of balance for us is that we declare it a myth. There's not such a thing as balance. If you're going to be a full-time student at a highly selective, you have to be a student. And that means you have to communicate that to your family, and you have to own that, and that you're gonna make a lot of tough decisions because there are a lot of things you cannot do. And so, for example, if you were caring for your grandmother, you have to talk to the family about who will be caring for grandma, right? And having these tough conversations. And by the way, it's so funny, people then rally around them, and we've never had a problem with then the students feeling this sense of guilt. These are the recommendations that I have. I'm really going to focus on the community college perspective and what are the things that a community college should do. There are 3 pieces of it, and I argue that, again, transfer discussion starts pre-enrollment. It's pre-enrollment and orientation. It should begin even sooner, but from the responsibility of the community college, it's really working at the point that you are recruiting to say, this is the track from community college to 4-year. If by the time that the student declares a major or is pursuing a major, the conversation is getting a little bit later and there's much more to be lost in terms of credits. And so it's really important that those conversations start, which is why we work with 4-year schools to make sure that they start recruiting at the same time with the community college students. Is that clear? So during orientation, there should be 4-year schools discussing what it is that they should be doing at that school so that they can definitely transfer to that 4-year institution and hit the ground running. That has been really important for our students because, again, they're contemplating transfer very early. Define the transfer choices very early, even for our high-performing students. They do not know what it is to pursue a PhD program, but many of them would say that they're pursuing a PhD program, or the difference between an MD and a PhD. The same is true for the bachelor's degree program and how many credits and what that looks like, especially what does full-time enrollment really mean, and the cost of education. If your cost of education is $70,000 a year, should you take 12 credits? And the assumption that they can take 12 and that they will work another 30 hours. All of these things have to kind of be put into perspective. And these are one of the major barriers for our students, understanding that. Discuss course enrollment with the, again, with the contemplation of transfer is really, really important as well. Again, for 4-year schools, it's really important to define the profile of a successful applicant and student that succeeds, right? Which are two very different things. What is your wish list? I always call it when I'm applying for work. They have a wish list, or when I'm looking for a candidate, it doesn't mean that everybody will meet that wish list. In making it clear to our students that there is a wish list, and that what are the pieces that your profile fits, and what are the areas that you need to work on. English, for STEM students, one of the major issues is that many of our STEM students are recent immigrants, and they're really not interested in taking English classes because it feels like it's going to bring down their GPA. So encouraging English, not just for the degree, but beyond, for English development has been very important to us. Probably the biggest fight that we have with our recent immigrant population. It's like, not just take English, but take an intensive writing course. That has been really important because for our 4-year, the feedback that we have received is that I can see that this student is excellent in science and in math. When they get to our school, they will have to write about science. They're not just going to be doing computation, and I'm concerned that they do not have the skills to do that. And so we work with them. Again, it's a big fight because they don't want their GPA to go lower than 3.9 or something like that. For the student, these are my recommendations, which is really to kind of explore, to use the community college as a place where they are going to really develop those leadership skills. And we work with people at the community college to make sure that they're fully aware of leadership opportunities. Phi Theta Kappa has been a major partner for us, and I am a huge fan. Full disclosure, I didn't have the money to apply to Phi Theta Kappa when I was attending Kingsborough. So it's really important that we work with PTK as well to provide opportunities for these students. We have about 10 more minutes, so I'm gonna make sure I just cover a few things, and then we'll have a Q&A session. The first year at the community college is really important, and that is that advisement is to focus on English and math sequence, regardless of major. When our students submit their applications to the 4 years and then we receive our acceptances, we often engage the 4-year schools about why it is that they didn't take our students. And the feedback that we often receive is that they did not have pre-calculus. So actually, a school has been very explicit about saying that if they do not have pre-calculus, even if they're pursuing English, if there is a science requirement, we are concerned that they will not be able to enroll in that class. We do not offer pre-calculus. And so that has been something that has come up in about 3 different schools that we've wanted students to attend, and they were not accepted. The same thing for a student that says in their application they're trying to apply for pre-med but haven't taken pre-calculus. So it's really, really important. Please share that information with your students. Let's see, a robust outreach of high performing. So again, at the time of recruitment, everybody is high potential. By the first year, we can determine who is high performing, and then focusing on those students to make sure that they are aware of the transfer opportunities, starting with the highly selectives to their local schools and all of that. It's really important. At this point, or even before, by the way, if I ever have more time, I really want to do a campaign on fee waivers. We have to get the news out. Please do a campaign on your campus about fee waivers. Our students apply, again, to about 15 schools. From all of the schools that our students have applied to, there's only 1 school that hasn't issued a fee waiver. 1 school. I should put them on the wall of shame, but I'm not. Well, I don't. Well, I have, and I can tell you later. But that school, we've had these discussions, but just think about all of the other schools that issue fee waivers. And by the way, it's not a form, it's not a code, it's not an extensive letter, there is no proof of documentation. We write a letter. Or somebody at the community college basically writes, this student cannot afford this fee waiver. For these highly selectives, it's basically what it takes. And when you're doing this on the online application, you can bypass the fee waiver issue and get students to apply and then contact the school. Also, I was told yesterday PTK offers fee waivers and also NACAC offers fee waivers, I heard. But again, we've never had to go through those channels. We just really asked someone to write a 3-sentence letter. And so if we can make that possible, I know for many of our students, and when we've visited 2-year schools, one of the questions, we can't afford to apply. And also to know that they have to apply to many schools. One of the things also that is becoming an issue for our students is the transcript fee. So I would encourage 2-year schools to really work on providing fee waivers also for transcript fees. For transfer students, you usually have to issue 2 transcripts. So thinking about that, because you have to issue a transcript at the time of enrollment, and then you have to issue a transfer once you get your final grades. And just thinking about applying to 5 schools, even if you're applying to 5 schools, that's an issue. That's a lot of money. That ends up being about $100 for a student in CUNY. So keeping that in mind is really important. I would say offering visits. Our students cannot attend a school that they haven't visited at least twice. And so it's really important that we work with the 4 years. Our 4 years have been great about covering the cost for travel and work. If a community college person or we call and say, can you make it possible for the student to visit, there are oftentimes a lot of funding for low-income students of color to visit, but just low income as well. It's really important that we make sure that there is an understanding that there are resources for these students to apply and properly assess the school. That is my timer. Okay. Isn't that something? It's like, whoa, all right. So also, in terms of the student, is to focus on course performance and faculty relationships. Thinking about the letters of recommendation, if the student doesn't have a letter of recommendation that is really a solid letter of recommendation that speaks to the class performance, it's going to be difficult for the 4-year students to really consider them as a contributor to that classroom, and that is major. We have been told, you know, my decision was really strongly based not just on the grades, but on that letter of recommendation that gave me a picture of that student in the classroom, because I wasn't really certain once I met them if they will be able to do this. So it's really important that we make that very clear to the students that they have to have a relationship. And we do, again, mock conversations with the professor. And we then we have a listing of professors in each school that they should go and talk to. And we also, if there isn't a professor there that they can take a class with, we have the discussion about how to engage a professor about getting involved in the classroom and beyond, even if that professor doesn't have any research or the professor isn't in our list. It's really important to say, I'm very interested in this subject. Do you have any recommended readings beyond this class? You know, this is what my goals are. How can I work with you to expand my learning? And believe it or not, that has really yielded a great deal of results. And it starts the relationship that they will have at the 4-year. Just keeping that in mind. That is mimicking what happens at the 4-year, but at the 2-year, right? Lengthy slide, so I'm not going to go all of it, but if we can just take away that's the fees are really important for our students and that it can be a very costly process. The transfer application, again, applied to a variety of schools is important, and from us, we haven't had any problem in transferring credits. But making sure that our students keep a syllabus, or that the professors provide a thorough syllabus to our students that they will bring in a folder in case that school does not grant that credit or doesn't assign it to the right sequence. That has been really important. Our students have been able to avoid taking an entire semester through that. Also for students that speak a different language, the language requirement in many schools may be 2 years and really swallows up a huge portion of their enrollment. So working with those students that speak a different language to make sure that they can be exempt from that language requirement. The transfer decision, I'm just going to summarize this. The transfer decision has been a big deal for us, and I know it has been a big deal to Jack and Cook, because getting them to enroll is very different than getting them accepted. and understanding that they have to be very, very clear about what are the financial aid, how much it would cost. Also to understand that they can reduce costs through their housing and board costs, that they can also negotiate their financial aid packages. We encourage our students to negotiate, and if you can think culturally for our students, that has been very difficult. And so, again, we act like the people at that school and say, you're calling me, you want to go to this school, but the other school is offering you a full package and this school isn't. What happens if the school says, that's all I'm willing to give you, right? And how do you work with them? And that's really important because it has really yielded really good results with the school maybe not able to match at 100%, but they come very close, and then the student can make a better decision. This is the summary of recommendations. To consider all incoming community college students as high potential, and then to work with the high performing as well, but to consider them all high potential and expose them to transfer information early, to offer academic extracurriculars and social activities in support of transfer. It's really important to encourage and support transfer to different types of schools. Again, let's remove from our heads that these schools do not accept our students. They do all the time. All the time. They should do it more often, and they should accept more. But we have to get out of our heads that that doesn't happen. It happens all the time. And go to our profiles and go to the Jack and Cook profiles if you doubt that. Encourage and support transfer to different, assist students in creating an in-classroom, on-campus, personal family profiling contemplation of transfer. It all has to be headed to that, and keeping that in mind from the moment that they decide to go to college. Now I already went over kind of avoiding the fees and dealing with costs of transfer schools, and I invite you to join, to go to our Facebook, to follow us on Twitter, and all of that. I'm horrible with any of those things, but I do encourage you to do it. Thank you.
I work at a community college, and
Sure.
so I just was wondering, how much do you stress to the students the completion of that associate's degree before transfer to a highly selective institution? And are you focusing on students completing an Associate of Science, Associate of Arts, as opposed to a technical degree when they transfer to those schools?
So we've worked with students who've majored in paralegal studies. We've ophthalmic dispensing. Did I say that? Ophthalmic, well, glasses, right? And so we work with all types of students, and we encourage our students to transfer to these four-year institutions, and we work with them in knowing that degree, even if you lose certain credits, you may be showing them the path at the 4-year that shows them that it's not going to take them 6 years. And so that has been really, really important to us. What was the other part of your question? I'm sorry. We do encourage our students to, I think you saw from our stats, I think it's 87%. That's something, we've only had about 2 students that have not been able to complete, 2 or 3 that haven't been able to complete their associate's degree, but we do encourage it. To us, it's really important because it's what they started with, and for them, completing that and celebrating that, it's a true milestone, and it's something that gives them, they become alumni of community college, and they become even, this is great sense of pride for them, so we encourage that. And we support community colleges in that way as well, yes. Well, thank you for coming. I wish you well. If you need the slides or anything like that, more than happy to share.